Good evening. This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The time is 7:03 p.m. and the date is December 12th, 2023. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. The board currently consists of 5 members and 2 alternates. The alternates taking full part in the discussions and becoming a voting member in the absence of a member or when a member abstains for conflict of interest. We have 2 voting members absent today, so our 2 alternates will both be voting. So we have a full suite of 5 members for the meeting now. Members present tonight are Kate Housley, Joe Kraus, alternates Ben Lockman and Paul Isherwood, who again will be voting members for this meeting, and myself, I'm the chair, Robert Delich. So also present, zoning administrator for the city, Mr. David Riggs. There are 4 cases before us tonight on the agenda for properties located at 5 Utah Place, 810 East State Street, 23 Ohio Avenue, and 206 Columbus Road. So the board is required to take testimony under oath. Would anyone wishing to speak tonight concerning any issue on the agenda please stand? Anybody planning to speak? Please stand. That's everyone, I think. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You can be seated. So our first case on the agenda tonight is... Oh, before we do that, yes, we need to read the rules. So if Mr. Riggs could please do that for us. Thank you very much.
A couple pages. I'll go through it as quick as I can. So this board operates according to the following procedures. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator or secretary will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The appellant or the representative will give reasons why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard. Anyone speaking in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the applicant and their representative will offer concluding summary or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor shall be closed, and the board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code, Section 230703B, the board has the power to grant variances from the strict application of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the code is observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to Athens City Code, Section 230710C, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the particular evidence presented to it and the standards and conditions imposed in the title, if applicable, have been met by the applicant. These include, number 1, exceptional circumstances. That is, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally or to other properties or classes or uses in that same zone. Number 2 is practical difficulty and undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to the specific piece of property. A literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Number 3 is preservation of equal property rights. Liberal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone in the same vicinity. Number 4 is a minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Number 5, absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Number 6, not of a general nature. the condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which the variance is sought, one or another in combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practical the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. Any person, resident, or officer, department, or appointed body of the City of Athens aggrieved by the decision of the board may petition the Athens County Court of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of this decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the decision of the board to the applicant. And that's all we got tonight.
You did good. Thank you, Mr. Riggs. So our first case on the agenda tonight is case number 23-09V at 5 Utah Place. The appellant is requesting a variance from Athens City Code ACC 23.08.01 to allow expansion of the driveway to create an additional parking spot located in the front setback. So Director Riggs, will you please provide us with your brief of this case?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This actually is not worded the best way, I don't think. So what the appellant is actually asking for is a parking, an extra parking place in front of the structure itself. And our code is a little bit different from most codes around the other communities, in that historically there's been a lot of concern about how rental students basically park anywhere they want in the front yard. So they created this ordinance which prohibits any parking spaces in front of a structure. In this case, originally there was a garage, and they had one parking space was allowed off-site in front of that garage. That's permitted, and the way the code's written today. Sometime after that garage was put in, the garage was converted into a living space. It was not a garage anymore, and that one parking space is still allowed there because it's grandfathered, it's legal non-conforming. They're asking for an additional parking space in front of the building right next to that one, so they could have two off-site parking spaces as required by code.
Okay. Any questions? Does the board have any questions for Mr. Riggs?
Just confirming that it looks like that the house takes up the entire width of the property.
Yeah, one of the problems with these ordinances, the zoning code, is that is really intended for a typical lot. These older lots that don't meet the width of, I think the minimum width now is 66 feet. You know, a lot of these lots were 40 feet wide, and the house took up the whole front of the structure, or front of the property itself. So it's hard for those types of lots to accommodate this zoning requirement.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for Mr. Riggs? All right. So at this time, I'd like to invite the appellant or their representative to please approach the podium, provide any pertinent testimony, or give reason why the request should be viewed favorably. Yes, and please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Scott Tootin. My first name is Harold. That's why it appears that way. I purchased a property at 5 Utah Place. I live at 3 Utah Place. The house is going to be renovated and brought up to current code standards. It was originally built in 1955, and it has a lot of structural issues with it due to termites and some what I'm going to call light building applications. And so I'm going to renovate this house, and it's going to be fully electric, and it's going to be up to the current IBC and IECC codes. And part of that is I would like to have the ability to have 2 charging stations for 2 electric vehicles, and that way I can pull both vehicles up and charge them, because I won't be able to string a extension cord to the street to do that, I don't think. And it'll save having to jockey back and forth. And regardless of what some people might think, these electric vehicles are coming, and they'll be here before we know it. And you just have to kind of think forward for these things versus living in the moment, so to speak. So I want to be able to do that. And also the street I'm on, at certain times it gets extremely busy with traffic. And I think getting off the street allows the traffic to flow better. Sometimes it can get backed up to where it's difficult to navigate when other people are parking on the street also. And that would just keep me off of the street. I think I supplied a plot plan. I don't know if you have that. Even with the new driveway, I'm still within the 30 and 60% lot coverages.
Okay.
So I haven't violated that or asked for any relief on anything there. So.
And is there an addition to the home you're going to be building as well?
If you look at the plot plan on the back, there's going to be a small sunroom back
Okay.
there for plants, and because I don't have that ability to do that now, so we just call it the sunroom.
Anyone have questions for?
Yeah, Scott, so I'm looking at the satellite map on this, and I can't quite tell, like, to add a second concrete pad, do you have to, like, take out a tree, or, I know there are a couple of large trees on Utah, but I'm not sure where.
No, so there were some small ornamentals there
Yeah.
that were, very short. One of the problems I'm having with this property is I can't meet the minimum IBC requirement for drainage away from the house. So I'm going to have to physically put a swale in that front yard to catch the flow off of the property and direct it to the storm drain. Currently, it flows towards the house. So,
Interesting. I thought I saw something somewhere in here about sewer work or storm sewer work. And I guess that's referring to that. Okay.
yeah, so trying to control that, the best practices. That's the only way I can go about it.
I have a question. From the site plan, there's a section on the driveway, it says remove driveway. Are you removing part of the current
So
driveway?
there's currently a driveway, room enough to park one car. You can't get two cars in the end
Yeah.
because you end up in the sidewalk, obstructing the sidewalk.
So you'll remove that and then build a new double wide.
Yeah, so I'll
driveway.
do the normal, 20-foot curb cut, I think is what it is, 20 foot. So I'll do a 20-foot, and then we'll probably go with two 10-foot wide parking spots or whatever's on that drawing. I didn't bring a copy.
So with a wider curb cut, any implications for that, Mr. Riggs, as far as how does the city coordinate that?
No, we've checked with city engineer, and they find that acceptable.
And so then the work would be done by the appellant, is that right?
Yes,
So,
yeah. All
or his
the curb work,
contractor?
yeah, everything.
Okay.
And, Mr. Riggs, as far as lot coverage, it's all,
Yeah, they're under
all
both
okay
the
with
30 and 60% requirement in our code, yes.
Okay.
I think this is, perhaps not like on the edge of things, but have you considered doing at least a partially permeable surface? Since you are increasing the coverage of the lot, I know it's within the code, but just want to kind of throw that out there a little bit.
I mean, I've looked at that where you can buy the surfaces and then backfill them and all, but I'm not sure how that's going to drain where I'm at because of the existing topography of the ground there. So.
Yeah. No, I just actually thought because of the draining back toward the house, you could almost use that as, kind of almost a dry well or, some, in addition or part of the drainage,
I mean,
solution. So you can maybe just take a look at it. And
yeah, I looked at the
obviously-
dry well, but once you get past the permeable soil, it gets pretty hard.
Yeah, it does. Particularly when it's all clay down there.
It is. because I've excavated by hand down to the footer of the split level addition, so.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions for the appellant?
No.
Okay. So, thank you. We'll bring you back up if we need to. You'll have an opportunity to potentially respond to other comments here if there's other folks commenting.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Sure. So now, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of this request? Please approach the podium and identify yourself and where you live, your address.
Yes, my name is Dwayne Bump, and I live at 7 Utah Place. Lived there some 43 years, quite familiar with the neighborhood. And the property of Mr. Tutton's is my next door neighbor at 5 Utah Place. I just want to lend my support to Mr. Putin for his request for a variance. He's made me aware of the details of the driveway expansion, and I think it's a great idea. And being his next door neighbor and familiar with how people feel in the neighborhood, I think it's a good plan, and I'm fully in support of it, and I hope it gets the approval of the board. Thank you, and hope I'm on record for that.
You are. Anyone else wishing to speak in support of this particular case? Okay, anyone wishing to speak in general comment? We don't normally get too many of those. Last time was like the exception.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
All right, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this case? Okay, so no rebuttals needed, I don't think, unless you want to comment about your neighbor's support. Okay, so closing the testimony from the floor at this time. So we'll now deliberate on this case. Any discussion before we start into the questions? Do we have any comments? This is us talking, and we can direct questions to Mr. Riggs or bring the appellant back up if we need to. But
A more complex one. It goes longer where we go back and forth, but this one feels pretty straight. I think we could go straight into it. If you
Okay.
want.
So we'll go into the questions that were discussed by Mr. Riggs earlier. So the rules we follow, we have 6 questions that we're answering for each of these cases. First one is, are there exceptional circumstances? Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone?
Yeah. I think based upon what David said at the beginning about the older homes and
I think it has to do with the garage being, originally a garage and no
Right.
longer being a garage, and a limit on the curb cut, right?
And then a limitation that the house is so wide you can't get a driveway past it
Right,
to put a
that's-
garage
yeah.
behind or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
or a longer driveway. So yeah, I think those are the kind of things, exceptional circumstances here.
been pretty clear examples of it. Pretty easy.
Is there practical difficulty and undue hardship because of the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property? A little enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary.
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to have a
The electric.
two-car driveway and
specifically the electric
Right.
station.
that as well, yeah.
Right, the charging.
Yes. I have a plug-in vehicle, and I think we have another board member that does as well, so we know sort of those challenges.
Yeah, I have 2 in a stacked driveway and deal with that exact problem. I have plenty of space for two vehicles in the driveway, but swapping them around for charging is always
Inconvenient.
inconvenient.
I can see it.
We'll call it
So-
practically difficult.
Then practical difficulties and undue hardship.
Yeah.
Yes. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations to deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone, the same vicinity. We didn't really talk about this here, but looking at
You can
what
see from
other
the satellite
properties.
maps, there are multiple other properties that have multi-car driveways.
Yeah, I
Right,
think,
and even, there's 3 rental properties on the street I noticed, and they all have the exact same number of spaces as tenants. So they've even got, off-street parking available, and not having that here is a limitation. One thing I was thinking about is having to walk your car every day, because the 24-hour parking restriction is a bit of an issue.
That's a fair point.
And being able to get cars off the street is helpful to avoid that problem.
Yeah, I think it's.
So minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. And it's just adding 1 space, so I think that's a minimum.
I think it's
Yeah.
very much the minimum.
Absence of detriment, the authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest.
Now the guy vouched for it.
yeah.
And also, it doesn't move any permanent surface covering closer to a neighbor. It moves it towards the center of the property. I think
There's no effect.
very little, if any, effect on any neighbor.
If anything, it takes a car off the street, which frees that up for other people to use too, so.
Right, for a high-volume street where he says congestion is an issue, for parking, that actually makes it better.
And then not of a general nature, condition or specific situation of this piece of property, which the variance is sought, is not so general as to be recurrent of a nature to reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. So I think this is not
It's specific, it's for,
general
it's
nature,
for,
it is specific.
it's for a second electrical, connection for the vehicle.
Into the case where a garage was turned into a living space.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're good on that front.
So would someone from the board like to propose a motion?
Sure,
Oh, go ahead,
Yep.
okay.
after you,
Okay, you're better at this.
it'll come around.
You can read.
We might all
okay?
get practice tonight.
You go.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I move to grant a variance to the property at 5 Utah Place from ACC 230801 to allow expansion of the driveway to create an additional parking spot located in the front setback.
I second.
Yeah, go. You're on note now.
The new guy.
The new guy.
All right, so we've a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, none opposed, so you have your variance 5-0. Thank you for coming before the board. All right, our next case on the agenda tonight is case 23-10V at 810 East State Street. So the appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.03.13 I1I to allow 2 wall signs on a building setback of 3 feet 10 inches where 6 feet 3 inches is required. So Director Riggs, will you please provide us with your brief of this case?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is part of our code where it's the sign code, and they've got some particular requirements for these front-facing signs. They'd like to see them 10% on each side of the building to, as a basically a wall space without any signage. This Donwood Hyundai is trying to do something a little different here. They've got the Hyundai located on one side. They've got Donwood on the other, and they've actually left a big blank in the middle. That's aesthetics. They could do it if they like. But what they've done is they've left 3 foot 10 inch space on each end where they really need larger space than that. That's what the variance request is.
Okay.
Mr. Riggs, could you repeat that? I'm just pulling up the pictures, and I'm not quite.
Yeah, if you look at, I think it's like 5 pages from the back of the pamphlet. or the package that you have. The service sign is okay. It's the Hyundai and Don Wood frontage signs. You can see they've got this big gap in the middle where they're not putting any signage in, but then they're putting a sign to the left and a sign to the right. And you can see their measurements, 3 foot 10 inches. That needs to be 6 feet 3 inches, and so that's the variance that they're asking for. They could push it more towards the center, but again, this is their aesthetics, and this is what they'd prefer.
So it's just moving the sign closer to the edge of the building, which
Farther
violates the
away.
sign code.
Closer
Yeah.
to the middle, right?
Closer to the middle, farther
Yeah.
away from the
They-
edge.
Oh, farther away from
Hyundai
the
and Donwood would move in, is the
Would
idea.
move in, yeah.
That's,
And do we know why
Yeah.
this is in place? Is it aesthetics that the code is trying to address?
I don't know why they've got it, so that sign code is set up that way. It's been that way for a very long time. I don't know the intent of that. I imagine it was because they didn't want to have a sign that blasts all the way across the building from corner to corner. But that's just my opinion.
That's what I was thinking. It must be to stop you from covering the entire frontage with a sign. Was the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
top and bottom. Like,
Yeah.
you want to give space so that you're not just. We've had a case in the past actually where they wanted to cover almost the entire front of the building with signs, and that's why this code
Yeah.
exists.
So we have had a similar case,
Yeah.
okay, I get it.
and it was just down the street from here, from this one. So, any other questions for Mr. Riggs? Do we have the appellant in attendance? All right. So if you'd come to the podium and introduce yourselves.
Good evening. My name is Hai Young with KSG Signs. Deborah Lee, or Deidre Lee. She's the one that drafted up the letter to the city. So basically, like Mr. Riggs had mentioned, we're just wanting to, bring the signs, get the offset. It's additional, I think, 29 inches, I believe, on each side. Cosmetically, I'm not sure exactly. This is just what is requested by Hyundai on their layout. I'm not sure, what else it could be honest with you. We're just the installer, the sign company that's going to do the installation, so.
I guess, do you have any other pertinent testimony or want to give any reasons why the request should be viewed favorably? So I have to pull up the document here and see, but you can reiterate things in the document if you feel that's
I'm
helpful.
thinking maybe when we come in, I guess when they want to come in on each end, the 6 foot, 6 foot 3 inches, I assume they just don't want it to crowd towards the center, I guess. They want to try to keep, the Hyundai and Don Woods a little more separated. It's my guess.
Yeah,
That's perfectly fine.
It's totally fine, yeah.
Interesting.
And it's over.
And we've seen signs like this laid out like that, at other dealerships too. So this is not really anything new. So.
So you mentioned Hyundai in particular has potentially a preference for how this looks.
Typically, it's kind of what they prefer. The dealers, they have their own layouts on how each dealership should look on the storefront.
I'm looking through the document here to see what else. So, is the sign already installed?
No, this is going to be new signage that we're putting up.
Okay. I didn't get to go by and look, so that's one thing I didn't get to do before the meeting here.
And this is like a backlit or a lighted sign as well?
I believe it's backlit.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there any other reason other than Hyundai want that designation that, like, is there any other reason other than that if you had to put the sign 6 feet in would be massively detrimental to the,
I don't think it would be, but, it's just their request, on the way it's laid out on the storefront.
They feel like it would crunch everything together too much and it would have a negative impact on their advertising.
Could they potentially just reduce the size of the sign?
I don't think that's an option for
Probably,
them.
that's not an option on reducing the sign.
Okay.
And it seems like about reducing the size, it would be just moving those logos in further.
Well, if you,
It's not all one piece, I would
if
imagine,
you
unless it's-
reduce the size of the sign, you're gonna.
Yeah, if you reduce the size of the sign to go with the offset that the city requires, the lettering would be too small.
Okay.
wouldn't there still, I mean, the width of the building is about 61 feet. There would still be a significant gap between the two signs. I mean, they wouldn't be right next to each other.
Well, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't be right next to each other, but they feel like it would be too close to each
When you
other.
say they, you are implying Hyundai.
Hyundai.
Yes.
I guess help me out here a little bit. Like the Donwood is your customer, correct? Hyundai is the dealer. If we were to deny this this variance request, what would potentially happen? Like as far as you're
We would
concerned?
just have to
Obviously-
go back and discuss with them if it gets denied and see, what happens after that.
Thanks.
But there isn't a likelihood that Hyundai is going to say, well, we're no longer going to do business there.
I'm,
You're not able to speak to that.
yeah,
Sure, he doesn't
I
want
can't
to
speak for them. Yeah. They're a pretty big company.
I've heard of them.
No, they want Hyundai and the name Donwood as far away from each other as they can.
All right, any other questions for the appellant?
That's what Hyundai wants.
I'm trying to do the math too.
I think that's all the questions I have.
All right,
That's fine.
so thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
So we'll go through the rigmarole here of asking if there's anyone else who wants to speak about this, and we'll give you an opportunity if there is somebody that wants to speak about it. Come back up and address that. So is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this request? Anyone wishing to speak in general comment? Okay, so if you could have a seat. We'll have somebody who wants to comment about this.
So my name is John Katowski. I live at 14 Northwood Drive here in Athens, Ohio. I worked for the university for a number of years. And I think that I guess what I'd like to say is that, as a community, we've gone through the regulations and developed regulations to restrict the size of things, maybe control a little bit things. And I just think it's important for us to really make sure that we look hard at them before we grant variances, because there's a lot of thought that has gone into developing the regulations. And I understand, Hyundai is a big company, and certainly Donwood is a large company too. But we've spent the time as a community, and I'd like us to make sure we look real hard at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak in general comment? Anyone else? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this case? All right, so would you like to respond to the general comment? Okay. So I'm going to close the testimony from the floor. and we'll now deliberate. Yeah, what Mr. Stokowski just said, I think it makes sense. We should be careful about granting variances and think through this, so let's do that in our process here. The one thing I think is interesting with this case is, and we had another case similar to this, where the signs were too close to the edge of the building, and we did, I think, believe, if I recall correctly, force that client to move them further in. But I think, as we discussed, the thought behind this is to keep the sign from being too cluttered, too much information on the building. And I think the case here is that that's not really the case. This is an aesthetic, and it's about the aesthetic more than it is about making this, there's not too much information on the sign. It's not garish. I look at this and I think, well, why didn't they pay attention to this detail up front? But maybe it's not a big issue. With John's comment, I still think maybe that the exception we might make here is one that maybe makes some sense.
I think, my question here is there any detriment? And I struggle to feel that there's any, clear detriment.
The only detriment that I see is between the two parties, between Hyundai and Don Wood. It isn't a societal issue or, anything that's really presented in front of us. So, yeah, I agree with Ben.
Mr. Riggs, as far as the, everything else about the sign application is within code. It's
Yes,
just
this is the
it's
only-
just the setback of
Just the setback
the two
on
ends.
each side, yes.
Thank you.
We are talking about 29 inches.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting, there's other places in the city, other businesses in the city where I wish we had regulations that would govern the signage in some of those places more than. But they don't seem to apply to those other places, unfortunately. Some garish signage, I'm sure you can think of some things.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments from anyone else, just general discussion?
No.
Okay, so are there exceptional circumstances? Exceptional, ordinary, extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes, same zone?
No, I don't think I can say yes to that. I feel like that's a no.
Yeah, everyone else has to do the same thing. Everyone else is at 6, is 29 inches.
Or we force them to be in compliance.
Right.
So not really exceptional circumstances in this case, though. Anyone disagree with that?
No.
It wasn't presented to us either. It wasn't presented to
No,
us in any
not really.
capacity of it being.
The appellant didn't really make that case.
Yeah.
Is there a practical difficulty and undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property?
I guess potentially a difficult conversation with Hyundai.
Based on a large corporation that has an interest in how this looks and that it's their brand that's in question here. So that's the sort of practical difficulty, which is not what we're used to, I think.
Right, it's not our fight.
So somewhat, at least, of a practical difficulty. Anybody disagree with that? Or have other thoughts?
I disagree that there's any that's been demonstrated.
Okay.
Yeah,
No.
I don't think there's really any practical difficulty.
Right?
Yeah, maybe for Hyundai, but not
Yeah, not
not for anybody else.
Or maybe for the whole one.
preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, While granting of the variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone, same vicinity.
It's the opposite. Yeah, it's the exact opposite.
So, really no in this case again.
I think so.
Number 4, minimum variance. Variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property.
No, they can use the property with the sign conforming to code.
Oh, absolutely.
I would say it's the minimum variance for the desired use, but not the minimum use.
Right.
It's true.
Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or public interest. And that's sort of the case I made in my first statement was, I don't think there's an absence of detriment. I think it's aesthetically works, and I don't think it's in violation of what maybe the intent of the code was, but
So yes, right. There
So I
is an
think-
absence of detriment.
yeah, there is an absence of detriment.
Yeah,
I think, in
I
this
don't
case.
think it
So we have a yes on
hurts anybody. Yeah.
one question so far. Item 6, not of a general nature. Condition or situation of specific property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought is not of so general or recurrent in nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation or such condition.
I would say
No.
this is no. Yeah. This
Yeah,
is a
not
fairly
of a
general use.
nature. Right, any other discussion? So I think that's the most no's I've seen for these questions in a while.
I don't think I have anything.
Would someone from the board like to propose a motion?
Sure. I propose a motion to pass the appeal at 810 East State Street, case number 23-10V, where the appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23-03-13. Am I supposed to say that other stuff? The I1I, I1I, to allow 2 wall signs with a building setback of 3 feet 10 inches where 6 feet 3 inches is required.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion before we vote?
This is a vote to approve or deny.
So we say it like this for what he's asking for. So we
Okay.
just say it word for word.
Yeah,
As if it was, the motion is to approve.
So it's always
Yeah.
to approve.
So
that's what I figured.
we vote yes to approve or no to deny it. Or any other questions? You're definitely new to this. I remember my first time, I was asking stupid questions, I recall. So
that's
no
not
question is a stupid question here.
Okay. I'll try and challenge you on that.
I got a monopoly on dumb questions. I'll share.
Okay, so we'll vote, call this to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And opposed, same sign.
Okay.
All right, so denied, 0 to 5. Okay, our next case on the agenda tonight is case 23-11V at 23 Ohio Avenue. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.03.14 to allow a fence within a 10-foot setback where 25 feet is required. Director Riggs, have any information about this
Thank you,
case?
Mr. Chair. So our fence regulations are a little interesting. We don't require a permit for a fence if it's under 6 feet. And there are no setback requirements for the rear or the side yards. However, if you want to put a fence in the front area, the front setback, you do need a permit, and that setback is the same for the zone as it would be for any other structure. So in this zone, it's 25 feet. for a setback, and they'd like to put the fence 10 feet, 15 feet into that setback, 10 feet back instead of the 25, which is required by code.
Okay. Right, any questions for Mr. Riggs? It's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward.
And it's a 4-foot fence, so it's.
Yeah, so normally they
but
wouldn't.
it's because it's in the front?
Yes, if they weren't encroaching into the front setback, they wouldn't even have to have a permit. We don't require a permit for fences unless they're over 6 feet in height. But because they're encroaching, this is where we would typically say, no, you can't do that. That's why they had to get a permit, and that's why we had to deny it, and they come here.
So one clarification is, this home fronts 2 streets, sort of, right? So how does that work? This is the, I think, side on Ohio where the house is actually facing that side, right? So technically the fence is in the front yard of the house?
It is in the front yard, yeah. It's the front yard is gonna be the address or where it's accessing. So if you're in a corner, that front yard setback is either gonna be where you pull in the driveway or where you have your mailbox, where you have your address associated. That other yard, we usually take half the distance. So instead of a 25-foot, we'd only require a 12 and a half foot set.
Okay, so if it was on the other side of the house on Watt Street, it would be a 12.5-foot setback.
Yep.
That's interesting detail.
And I think this house is actually interesting because its front walk actually comes diagonally to the corner, and the driveway is on Watt Street, so they wouldn't make sense to really put a fence on the Watt frontage of the house.
Yeah, the house is uniquely situated in some way.
Yeah.
Yep.
If they had a different address, then it would only be 2.5 foot variance, right? So if the address was on Watt, but
Right,
because
go
their
from
address is
12.5 to 10.
Ohio.
Right. That sucks.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Riggs? At this time, I'd like to invite the appellant or their representative to please approach the podium and provide any pertinent testimony or give reason why the request should be viewed favorably.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for hearing me out. As you could tell by your conversation, it was...
You gotta say your name and
I'm
your
sorry,
address.
Russell. My name is Russell Morrow, 23 Ohio Avenue.
There you go.
As you all were discussing, it was bringing back to me the confusion as we were trying to figure out kind of what we were permitted to do. My wife and I bought the house in February. We had, at the time, a 2-year-old. He's now 3. We quickly learned that he loved running around and playing in the backyard. If you walk out of the back door of the house, Ohio is perpendicular to coming out of the back of the house. And so he runs out, he plays, and we realize that because of where we are with the intersection of Ohio and Watt, that a fence probably made sense for safety reasons. We saw a lot of cars kind of turn the corner and hit the curb. It just made us worried about having our kid play in the backyard. So we looked into getting a fence. Worked with Lowe's. Lowe's contracted it out during that process. So for context, the fence is up and it's installed. And when we went through the process with Lowe's and the contractor, they told us we didn't have anything to worry about in terms of code or permit. I think they thought that the 4-foot piece and where that fence would not cause a problem. So we did not expect to have any sort of issue until after we had the fence installed, had a knock on our door. Hey, there's an issue here. And so we've been trying to work to get that all figured out. As you all kind of discussed, our garage is off of Watt Avenue. Our front door faces Ohio, but the steps up the front, the steps up to the front of the house actually face Watt. And like our front porch swing faces Watt. If you look at a house, it feels like the front of the house is Watt. Our fence is back. It's off of the front of the house. So it doesn't look like it comes to the front of the house. It goes to the side and then up the sidewalk perpendicular to Ohio. So
So it goes more along Watt, is that?
no, it goes along Ohio,
Okay.
but it's Yeah, it goes along the
It's only
house.
maybe half the yard though, right?
I'm sorry.
It's only maybe half the yard that the fence actually is cordoning off.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
It's like there's two lots probably.
There are two lots. Yeah,
the house
that's
is
the other
on
thing. So
one,
we
and
are on,
it's like a
we are
side
on
lot.
two lots.
And it's really the side lot that's fenced, right?
Yes.
That seemed to be about right.
Yes. That's
Interesting.
correct.
That's where it is.
Anything else you'd like to comment before we start asking you questions?
No, I don't think so. I think for us, the biggest things were safety and kind of uncertainty about like the corner and where we are situated at the intersection of Ohio and Ohio.
And can you clarify one thing? Is it 10 feet from the, what's the front? Where's that 10 feet being measured from?
It's being measured from Ohio, I think kind of like the middle of Ohio Avenue to the setback. I don't remember exactly how that was explained to me, but we did some measurements. And so it's, yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think, I mean.
We might need Mr. Riggs to address.
Yeah, to clarify that, but yeah.
So for the setback,
Yeah, our code office worked with the applicant, and we think that what he's requesting, a fence with 10-foot setback where 25 feet is required, that's from the right-of-way.
which is
So it's from
probably,
the edge of the right of way, not from the center of the street.
Correct, yeah.
Correct, okay, yeah. Thanks.
so the right of way would include the sidewalk. It's probably from that
Yes.
side of the sidewalk, somewhere
Yep.
close to the
Right, it's
sidewalk
like
at
right
least.
there.
It's probably 5 feet in from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
What type of fence is this again?
It's a white picket 4-foot fence.
Yeah, and it's pickets that, I've just taken a look today, it has pickets with gaps between them. So it's visible, you can see through the fence easily. Nice aesthetic, I think.
I've been at my house for 17, 18 years. My son is 16. We have a white picket fence, and me being a landlord, I was friendly with his predecessor, and so I was very specific asking about it. And we wanted it all the way to the edge, and we're told of the hiccups that there were going to be, and so we did do it to the city specs, to what they want. Just saying this in case somehow you were to be denied. I'm not saying it one way or the other. It's been okay for us. With the dog, with the kid, we thought aesthetically, and my wife was the driving factor in it many years ago, that she thought it would look odd. That you have a white picket fence going, ours is totally around the whole back side of our house, and we have a double lot like you, and we're at the corner. I'm at Marietta and Patton, so just where Kindred is. And so if things have to change, I'm saying it's not that bad. We have, like I said, we have the exact, that's why I was wondering, because I thought this was a very similar circumstance to what I have. And it seemed as if my wife was going to not be cool with it. And I'm just saying, it's been okay. And because we really thought, like, that's just going to look really stupid, halfway through the yard and not, in a better aesthetic way, surrounding it, bordering it, I should say. And
I completely understand that. I think for us, we just did not know we couldn't do it until
Sure.
it was already done. I think is kind of what our situation, really, the foundation of our situation was.
yeah, I'm seeing where you're coming from.
And as far as your contractor who kind of promised you this, that, it would be permitted and all that, wouldn't the financial responsibility of changing it land on them and not you guys?
Potentially, I have to go back and look at the contract that we did with them. But should that be the case, we would certainly explore that option.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you did have to move the fence, does it still leave you with like space?
It would, I think, because of the two lots and the way
Yeah.
that it's situated, it would still be a nice sized backyard, enclosed backyard area.
So this is the setback here.
Right.
And yeah, so it's a few feet on the inside of the sidewalk.
So Paskey told me in the day, just go along the edge of every structure on your building, and code can't say or do anything. And that was what we did. We thought it was gonna look stupid, and we got used to it.
It does.
Sounds like that. He's big.
Well, I'll comment that I was looking at the fence, I was expecting like a 6-foot tall privacy fence.
Right.
Which is a pet peeve of mine. In the neighborhood like I live on Morris Ave, by the way, so a block over from you. And it's a pet peeve when people put up a privacy fence in a neighborhood like this. What, you're trying to hide from your neighbors? So I actually appreciate the design you selected.
Yeah.
We were very intentional. We did not want the 6-foot privacy fence, and we knew that that would come with more complications for code purposes.
36.
Any other questions for the appellant? I'm sort of trying to take a aerial view look here myself.
Mr. Chair, I was just doing some additional information here. I'm looking on the Athens County Auditor's parcel, and they're showing a little chart here from the house to where the end of the fence is 18 feet, and then there's another 10 feet to the what they call the property line. And I'm measuring on the auditor's website, and the property line is just behind the sidewalk, and that does look like it lines up pretty close. I got 40 feet total. This would be 38, so we're right in the ballpark of where that would be. So that 10 foot is from the right of way from the property line, and not from the street or the curb. So that's correct.
That makes it better. Okay.
Yeah, because there's like space between the sidewalk and the property line there. You see this here? Like there's
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, so there's a little bit of like setback between physically between the sidewalk and
The fence would be here, right?
it's 10 feet back
It's
from this
sort of
this
around
line,
this
right?
blue parcel,
yeah.
but it's about 10 feet back from the side.
If you look here, this is like
That's
that side.
That's what I have, right?
So it's-
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Have you talked to your neighbors at all over this? Is there any, you get the sense from anyone that?
I mean, people
what you
have
did was
told
a
us that they've
problem?
liked it. I think
Okay.
our right next to us, where the fence kind of is, we think is a property that is mostly vacant, but sometimes people live there, so we don't feel like we have a consistent neighbor that is directly next to where the fence has been installed.
So one other question, I guess, is we're talking about the street side, but it looks like your design, you matched this up to meet the neighbor's chain link fence, is that right?
Oh, yeah, it comes right in front of to where the property lines kind of meet.
So there was already a fence on the
Yeah,
other
so there's a
side?
chain link fence on their end that goes all the way down the back of the property. So we stop kind of right in before, right where they meet.
Was because the fence stopped there, was that like, where they said that's where we'll start the fence over from there, was that like the,
Yes, because it was already there. We didn't
Yeah.
feel the need to pay for have the fence to go all the way down. If
Sure.
the other fence was already there.
Makes sense.
But little did you know.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
So is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this request? Or in general comment about this request? Or anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close the floor and the board will now deliberate. So any general discussion before we go into the questions?
I've been in this situation before where a contractor has told me, don't worry about the permits, I got that.
Sure.
And found out afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't. It's not fun.
I got one more question for him, just about what he said. Sir, can I ask you one question? Yes. So you got, you
Come up to the podium if you're going to answer, so we get you on.
Sure. I'm just trying to get everything as far as this. So you decide you're going to get a fence, and you go to Lowe's, and Lowe's is the one that got the contractor, or you just got the material from Lowe's, if you don't mind?
Lowe's did the work with the contractor, yeah.
It's even worse, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's,
Just wanted to get that on the record. It was even worse for,
So is it a subcontractor through Lowe's? They just hire?
Yes, so they brought someone in,
Lowe's does that with everything.
Yes.
Lowe's doesn't do anything as far as building and installing. And so I just wanted to get it on the record because you went to Lowe's, who is the local company that's been here the longest, that this is what they do, and they assured you, we got somebody and they'll take care of it. Okay, I think that might be a little mixed in any circumstances. Just wanted to say it.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude.
so, question one, are there exceptional circumstances? That's
it.
your
Yeah,
point.
that's why I had you come back up. I think that makes you have exceptional circumstances, right? Yes, my opinion.
I'm sorry, I missed what that was.
Oh, I thought his exact case is unique because of the contractor, because of what Lowe's contracted
Okay,
out.
so
and
that
makes his case an exceptional circumstance in this particular situation.
Particularly as the fence is already there.
Yeah, but we're not supposed to think about.
Yeah,
those
we can't think about the fence. I'm talking
Yeah.
about how him and his wife went to Lowe's to get a fence. He's not the first fence Lowe's has sold in the city of
Right,
Athens.
but that's really not anything to do with how we,
Oh, sure,
right?
sure. No,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So
I think
in
that
my
they-
view, unexceptional, the primary exceptional circumstance is the fact that it's so uniquely situated on the lot. It sort of has both a front door and a backyard facing the same place by virtue of
Oh,
the fact
sure.
that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
good.
would say I would very
Yeah.
much agree. I
Yeah.
would say that the contractor situation is every contractor should actually do their homework and get the appropriate permits and do their research. And sadly, some contractors don't. Apparently,
Yeah.
Lowe's being one of those. Many contractors also use subcontractors for parts of jobs or all of jobs at times. So yeah, I would say the exceptional circumstance is the parcel layout.
Yeah, in particular, that what they fenced seems like a backyard or side yard, and
Right.
it happens to be part of the front,
Right.
which is, because it's a different layout. It's unique, I think, in that respect. So I think that, I think you're right, Kay, that is
Yeah.
the exceptional circumstance here.
That's a better exceptional circumstance, I agree.
She's been on the board.
Yeah, she knows. Is there a practical difficulty and an undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property? A literal enforcement of these regulations will result in a practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. And
I would say I'm very much on the fence about this one.
I understand what you're saying.
Where it's like there is a practical difficulty that the fence is already in place. We're not supposed to actually consider based on that. But the reality is that life that is a very practical difficulty that will have to be dealt with. Again, it's also significantly harder to deal with the corner lot as we dealt with as a board
Right.
multiple times.
Yeah.
Code doesn't provide as many kind of modifications for corner lots as perhaps it should.
And ultimately, I think that difficulty or hardship here would be the loss of all that space that could be used as a yard and inside the fence. And if it's yard outside the fence, not very useful.
I would argue maybe there that the point of a setback is that you can have, you can use yard outside of a fence also. It's just it's perhaps a different use, right? It's a more community and neighborhood oriented use of that space outside of the fence, and that's specifically why we have setbacks
In the front.
in the front
In the
yard.
front, particularly, we're talking about 25 feet,
and-
which is a long setback.
There is perhaps an argument that says that for a corner lot, it from the community perspective, it still is a front yard, right? This is fronting onto a street. it is, there's pedestrian, traffic. It does have some aspects of a front yard, as well. And so, this is why I kind of like, I'm a little bit uncertain on this, kind of this answer.
This question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I'm with you.
You're agreeing that, yes, it is a hardship, there's a hardship here, is what you're,
I don't know if I totally agree is what I'm saying.
yeah, so, what's your feeling?
I think it is a hardship.
Okay. So 3, preservation of equal property rights. And I'm sort of reading these more or less partly because Paul is new, and so he hears
Yeah, and I
these.
appreciate it.
It takes getting used to
Yep.
all this. I have it written in front of me, so I can read it if we need to. Let me read it, I guess.
I would come out much more in favor of this one as a as a corner lot. You have reduced property rights in this case, and so this allowing variance here would very much preserve equal property rights compared to somebody who doesn't have a corner lot. So I would come out versus the previous question. I would come out much more of a strong yes on this one.
I agree, I think. So, Paul, it's about, are there rights here that would be, this property would be denied that others have been able to take advantage of?
Yeah.
Commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone, in the same vicinity, while granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and same vicinity. So I think the key is because of the orientation of this property, it is sort of weird. And in order for them to enjoy this property like others are able to do, fencing, this seems to be within reason, by something like what the other property.
That sort of difficulty of determining what to do with a corner lot may very well, not that this is, we should decide it based on this, but the reason why the contractor was suggested that this seemed to be okay to them.
Quite possible.
Could be,
That's possible,
Yeah,
yeah, true.
yeah.
Yeah. Other comments about property rights, equal property rights?
No.
So minimum variance, the variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. I'd say a 10-foot setback in this situation seems pretty reasonable to me. It's still, if you didn't get to go view the property, it's behind the trees. Fence is in a nice position, I think. It's hard to, it's not in the photos because it's brand new, right? But
That's right.
it's behind those trees. It's, I think aesthetically looks good. The position, it's set back enough, but not too close to the sidewalk.
Yeah, I would say that on the other hand, it may or may not be a minimum, and we don't have a good read on that. It's just what Lowe's decided
Yeah.
to say that they thought was okay.
And I think the key is maybe it's because the trees, it might have been ended up closer to the sidewalk if the trees weren't there, possibly.
Yeah, no.
And it ended up that it set back far enough, I think, where it seems to be a reasonable request.
I would say it's definitely a reasonable request. I have a hard
Is it
time
the
saying whether
minimum?
it's minimum or not, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest.
No.
I think this is a clear absence of detriment for me.
Nobody's come out in opposition to it.
Nope.
No letters, we didn't get any emails or anything.
No.
Not of a general nature, condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought, one or the other or in combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practical the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. And I think the corner lot situation makes this pretty specific. Not of a general nature, although other corner lots may have similar issues, I guess, but that's pretty specific.
Agreed.
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 So would someone from the board like to propose a motion?
I'll propose one. I would propose a variance for case number 2311V at 23 Ohio Avenue, where the appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 230314 to allow a fence within 10 feet, within a 10-foot setback, where a 25-foot setback is required.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we vote?
No.
Hearing none. Let's call for a vote. So vote of affirmative with your right hand. Right. 5-0. You have your variance.
Stop by my house and you see that setback. You're welcome. You see, I wasn't certain. You should have been forewarned.
All right, our fourth and final case for the night is case number 23-12V at 206 Columbus Road. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.03.13 I-2D to allow 3 directional signs with a face area of 16.9 and 12 square feet, where 3 square feet is the maximum permitted, and a height of 6 and 6.5 feet, where 3 feet is the maximum height permitted. So Director Riggs.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually a kind of a unique case. We don't get very many hospitals newly constructed in the city of Athens. It's a real exciting project. We will make sure we do it right. And I think Marietta Memorial is trying to do the same thing as well. What we've got is one monument sign. It's basically the sign that describes what the what's at the location, and then they're asking for 3. We're considering these directional signs because it tells you where to go park, where the emergency access is, and that kind of stuff. So we've got one monument sign out there, and then where there are going to be 3 directional signs. Directional signs are really important for hospitals because in an emergency you need to know where you should go. You don't want to drive down the wrong access point. So they're trying to show these signs. Now they're going to be much bigger than what's allowed, but if you recall, this hospital got a variance for height, the 4.5 stories, where 3.5 is permitted. So this is actually a really big structure as well. So these bigger signs wouldn't be inappropriate for the type of structure that's actually out there. So that's the request. If you'll look in the back, they've got several maps. They don't show specifically where, they're not giving you exact locations on these maps. At our code office, we'll make sure that they get those exactly located before we approve if they approve the variance, before the permits get approved, we'll make sure that they're specifically located and make sure that they won't be located in the city's public right-of-way.
And so a little more background on the right-of-way. This is a very wide right-of-way on the street.
Yeah, 150-foot right-of-way on Columbus Road. That's partly because it was a state route for a lot of years before they did the bypass. So it's an extremely wide right-of-way in this area. The city's actually doing a bikeway in front of this hospital all along Columbus Road. That's probably going to be installed in the next few years. That's another reason why we don't want these directional signs to be located in the right-of-way. We don't want them to impact that proposed bike path that's coming through.
And I serve on the task force for the pedestrian accessibility and bicycle task force in the city here now.
That's an exciting project too.
And it is exciting to see the city's intending to install a shared use path along the road there, and that would connect into the bikeway spur on Columbus Road.
Yep.
It's great news. So
nice.
Happy to hear about that.
So you were saying that typically, so the rationale for the code on the size of these is related typically because the size of the buildings that they would accompany are typically smaller?
Yeah, so this is so our directional signage is kind of generic, right?
Yeah.
So that would typically be for If you have a warehouse, shipping and receiving sign, you've seen those. That's typically what you'd want to see, and that's that 3 square foot regulation. This is really not that same beast, right? It's something a little bit different. We're trying to direct them to the parking garage, direct them to the emergency, to different places. And if you look at the other 2 hospitals in the area, they have those bigger signs. They're bigger than the 3 square foot directional signage that you'd see in a warehouse or industrial complex.
Is there not an issue that the vast majority of the signs and the designs provided is actually the logo for the hospital rather than the actual directional sign?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons they're larger,
Okay.
it seems.
And this is 3 separate sign locations, correct?
Correct, yes. Yeah. There's
They're all-
total of 4 monument signs here. One is going to be the typical monument, and the other 3 we're considering them as directional signage.
Right, so those are the ones, 1, 3, and 4, 2 is already. 2 is where the.
So, and the large monument sign, the main sign is within specs, and so it's
That's
it's
correct.
already been approved.
It's already
by
been approved,
the
yeah.
code
Okay.
office.
Yeah, then that would be 2, okay. Ooh, that's-
Any other questions for Mr. Riggs?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay.
All right. So at this time, I'd like to invite the appellant to come to the podium or their representative and provide pertinent testimony, give reason why the request should be viewed favorably. Identify yourself, of course, in the process, please.
My name is Roger Smith. I'm with Cooper Signage and Graphics, representing or for the Memorial Health System Athens Medical Campus signage that we're trying to get a variance for. We're asking for the 3 with the sizing because of the size of the project. And you're on a busy highway. You're always vehicular traffic. You do want them to turn in the right spot. A lot of times you've got, of course, you got the medical personnel with ambulances and stuff, so they need to find where they need to go. Then you've also got first-time visitors that are under distress. You want them to find their way easily as well. And 2 of them are on 2 of them are on Columbus Road. One of them is actually set in from the road, but I guess it needs a permit because it's still visible from the road, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
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 So one thing that's helpful is if you can guide us a little bit with those questions we've been asking. You can provide any reasons why the request should be viewed favorably. Any other details you might want to provide. They can be details right out of the document if you want to restate things even. It'd be helpful.
I know one of the big questions is why was the logo so big? I guess just part of the Marietta brand standards, but also we like to look towards the future as well. So we have the listings that are on the signs right now. That also gives us, if the variance is approved, it gives us the ability to add more listings, and then that logo could shrink down, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, because that was my question. It seemed to be asking for a very large sign so you could put a really big logo on the highway, as opposed to really, because the signs are really small compared to the overall. I mean, but that answers that question a little bit, and that if there is intended future further development at the site.
That's not up to me.
No,
But that's how we like to. We like to plan for
Okay.
future, and they don't. Marietta's spending a lot of money. I guess it's buy once, cry once. And it does allow them to flexibility if they want to add more listings in the future.
Mr. Chair, the Marietta Memorial has had discussions with us about adding on to this in the future. So this may not be the final size of the structure in the hospital. They have talked about some additions, both vertically and horizontally.
Yes, they have engaged
Yeah.
other property owners in the area.
Yeah, they bought everything.
Yeah, so it's a fair assessment. They're gonna grow. Yeah.
And the signs fronting on Columbus Road are illuminated. Is that correct?
Yes.
But the one internally is not illuminated. Is that what I'm getting here?
Let me see.
Yeah,
what
that's
it-
correct. Yeah.
Which one is the internal? Was that 1, 2, or 3?
Location 4.
4.
Yeah.
Yes, non-illuminated.
Is there? Do you know what the reasoning behind illuminated versus non-illuminated? Because my read of the code has historically been that illuminated signs are, they're more visually impactful, right? So they can be potentially distracting to drivers. They can also be easier to read for drivers, right? There's a pro and a con to it, but do you know
I
why
think
that-
it's more for the, I mean, you're already in the campus, where it says, I mean, arrow right ambulance. That would be with a reflective vinyl. So when the headlights do hit it, that's what pops.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it's inside, it's inset far enough. It's from our designer standpoint, it wasn't needed to be illuminated.
I wonder, is that area already, is it illuminated at night with, some sort of street lighting? I don't know. So it doesn't need it to be illuminated.
They'll have plenty of street lighting.
Oh, yeah.
We're on the campus.
Yeah.
So that fourth sign is really more about loading zone and directing trucks and other services maybe coming
I
to
think
the
it's the
property, right?
ambulance entrance as
Is
well.
it the ambulance
and
entrance
then
too?
Yeah.
It's also for the,
Right?
receiver.
Yeah.
On it there.
Ambulance comes in, so if you look, it's ambulance comes in here, the sign's right at the split between loading and ambulance.
We don't like to oversign a facility, but we don't like to undersign it.
Is it
So is it, it's 4 signs?
one's already permitted.
Okay.
Right,
So
the large,
We're only
The big
considering
one, the
3.
big one that's not lit is already given the green light.
Location number 2 is the one that's approved.
Okay. Now I can understand.
so I guess one of the concerns, board member Isherwood mentioned is that the logo seems to take up quite a bit of these signs. So they're oversized. A lot of that, maybe 2/3 of it, looks like, from my guesstimate, is because of the logo. I mean, you mentioned one reason that might be the case is to leave room for expansion. So if there's other businesses, other medical facilities that are added either inside the existing building or addition, then it leaves the possibility for adding that to the sign.
Correct. And with the size, you know where you're at. You know you're at Athens Medical Campus. When you arrive, there's no question about it. And it's hard to tell on paper, I mean, how big these, I mean, 'cause the font that we typically use size-wise, you're still at a 3 or 4 inch height. So 3 and 4 inch height, you can still read that from 100 feet away, 200 feet away.
So I'm going to ask a
For
couple
the,
questions.
for the listings, for the listings.
Ask a couple questions you may not have an answer for, but one of my concerns is about the location of these signs. They're large, even the 6.5 feet tall, looks like from the drawing. There's I haven't found it here, but I saw earlier a person standing next to it, and it's taller than a person in general. So pretty tall sign. One of my concerns is it could be a safety hazard if it's impeding the view of people leaving the property, pulling out into the road, and or if there's a bikeway built by the city as discussed, that it could impede visibility of pedestrians or cyclists on that path. So how far back these signs are going to be from the road and from the right-of-way are things that I would like to know. I don't know if you have any answer for that.
I don't know if I could answer that right now, because we're still wanting, I'm not even sure if they know where the right of way ends up.
Correct, yeah.
And 2's already been approved, and it's the really big one.
Yes, it's not near any driveways though.
Fair enough.
And so I don't think that would necessarily be a visual obstruction. The others are closer to the driveway.
But that's an issue that other entities in the city will make sure.
Sure, yeah.
We don't have to worry
As I
about
said
that.
earlier, if you approve this variance, we'll make sure that the exact location is outside of that existing city's public right-of-way, and that's so big that there'll probably be one or two cars in front. The stacking lanes on this will be probably one or two cars in front of those signs. So those signs will be pretty far back, and our office will make sure of that.
All right, that sounds good. Any other questions for the appellate representative? Okay. So thank you for your testimony, for taking the time to answer our questions. There's no one else present, so anyone speaking in favor or in general comment? Oh, there is somebody still here. You're hiding. I couldn't see you behind him. So let me ask the questions unofficially. Is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone wishing to speak in general comment? I will speak. Okay.
So, I would like to just reinforce some of the discussion that has gone on here as a cyclist and a person using alternative transportation, and hopefully, in fact, one that'll be able to use a path that ultimately will be developed along there, that we do make sure that the pedestrian is taken into account as we locate these signs now in advance of any of those developments. And so I just want to reinforce that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? All right, so would you like to respond to that? You have an opportunity if you want to. Okay. Thank you. So I'm closing testimony from the floor. The board will now deliberate. So any general discussion before we dive into the questions?
No. Not on this side of the room.
I have a question, Mr. Riggs. If we grant variance, I kind of question a little bit the internally illuminated piece. If we already if you don't need that internal to the campus, do you need that on the the side of Columbus Road also? Is that within our ability to specify in our variance or not?
So one of the codes we have is light trespass outside of the right of way, so they can illuminate on their property, but that light trespass of 0.1 looms or candles, foot candles, is if it's a bright sign, we'll have to check that to make sure, and they'll provide an illumination plan for us that'll show where that lighting falls, that potential lighting falls based on these designs. We'll look at that and make sure that that they don't exceed that 0.1 foot candle outside of their property. That's probably the only codified regulation that we'd have for illuminated signs.
So we couldn't suggest a variance that specifically was for
With a
a
condition.
non-illuminated.
You absolutely could. That's not a codified thing. So you can put it whatever you want in your variance. If you wanted to approve it, you could put those stipulations in there.
Yeah. Thanks.
So that could be a condition.
Yeah, I don't know if that mitigates any of the potential
I
downsides of it.
would be uncomfortable putting anything like that in there because I'm not expert. I don't know if you all are, but we might be asking for something that we don't know enough about to ask for.
I mean, I think it's just that if they don't need illumination within the campus, and these are not within code as is, they're not allowed to have them at all currently. If we don't have to give them necessarily everything that is being asked for. If we have a one of the requests is specifically for a non-illuminated sign. So sign location 4 is not illuminated currently. It also doesn't have a health logo on it.
Yeah, that's not part of the actual text of the variance request.
Yeah, so illuminated signs are permitted. Just can't be moving, scintillating, no video, that kind of stuff. So illuminated sign is permitted by code. They would not need a variance request for that.
Okay, any other discussion?
I think the question, I'd like to hear other opinions from the board on is the kind of like impact of pedestrian and multi-use, biking that we heard a general comment about, and Rob, you brought up. I don't have a strong feeling on that, but
And I think it's sort of outside our scope, really, in some ways. The city, Mr. Riggs said, the city is already paying attention to that issue, and we'll address that. Another condition maybe we could put on this would be to make sure the signs are set back a certain distance from the right-of-way. But that's getting into the weeds, and again, I think we're not experts. We don't know what that should be.
What should that be?
We don't know what that should be. So I think that's leaving to the code office and the engineers to make those decisions, make the right decision, and make sure that this is designed and installed so that it's safe, both for use of the roadway and for use of a shared use path if it's constructed. So I think they've got that, it sounds like. And honestly, if issues arise later, I will definitely be paying attention to this as a member of the pedestrian and bicycle committee as well. So it would help advise the city if it looks like there's safety issues.
Okay.
I was taking a look at the Wexner Medical Center, and it doesn't appear that that facility has any meaningful signage on kind of the large entrances. I don't think it's necessarily necessary. Based on that, much larger metropolitan area and much larger medical center, maybe a lot more easy to spot also.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like
It's not.
it won't be not known as a hospital.
There's nothing else. There's not like there's a lot of us there that you won't see it necessarily. Like,
And I'm looking at images from Street View, Google Street View of Oblena's hospital sign. They've got a large sign. It's probably a little smaller than the one for this facility, but out front, it has an arrow on it. And it has, emergency this way and Ohio Health and Ohio. So it's that big sign essentially, but it also has an arrow saying enter here. If you look further back in, there are directional signs on the roadway. You can just see it in the image here. That looks to be beyond the minimum the city has but it's well internal to the property. And so it's not near the roadway. I think the code wouldn't even apply to this
Yeah,
situation.
So our policy has always been that if you can't see it from the road, it's not a sign. And that would be the case here. It's really hard to see those internal signs from the road, and there are a lot of them, and they're fairly good sized if you get inside that campus, yeah.
Yep.
It's just a different setup. They don't have a big campus like Oblenis does, and all their signage is going to be right there against the road.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of depth in that site because of the river.
Right,
pretty
and so
much
they
backing up
need
to it.
sort of similar signage to what Oblenis has, but they don't, because it's close to the road, there's this restriction that now kicks in.
That's correct, yes.
I think that's an important factor here. So I'm looking at this Oblenis sign that's, you can barely see from the road, way back. It's probably 100 yards, almost back, 75 yards at least. And it's probably twice the size of this requirement.
Yeah, 12 foot. I was guessing 12 foot, yeah.
I mean, this is significantly bigger than the requirement, than the minimum, the maximum required height, allowed height, and size.
Okay, so let's start in on the question. So are there exceptional circumstances apply to the property in question or the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone? I think I just mentioned one. I stumbled across it, I think, ultimately, is that a similar kind of facility has more setback from the road, and so there has more flexibility for this directional signage, this property, because it's close to the roadway. And they couldn't have built much further back because it's flood zone back there. In fact, they had to, I believe, build up the back of the property to even be able to put the parking garage and the building in place. So they couldn't go further back. So I think ultimately that's potentially the exceptional circumstance is the narrowness of the property. They had to put the building close to the property, close to the front of the property, and therefore that's kicked in the restrictions on the signs. That a similar property also seems to have signs that are larger than, but weren't restricted the same way. Any comments?
That makes sense. I think also the fact that it's a very, very large medical complex on a very busy street, that also is relevant to the request. And it
Yeah,
has a lot of different things happening within it.
You know, I will say that, you know, I'm looking at this, you know, on Google Street View and seeing all of the, you know, orthodontics and dentists and, you know, other, you know, medical or medical adjacent facilities, all with, you know, signs that are significantly smaller directly across the road, for what it's worth.
But they aren't a similar facility, though.
They're not a similar, like, scale facility, for sure.
Yeah.
They are, you know, they might classify themselves similar from an industry standpoint.
Does the fact that this is an emergency room factor into that at all, and that the people who would be going there are, you know, they're not, you know, you're not you know, you really, is that, I don't know if that's a factor, is that?
Oh, I mean, I definitely think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is there practical difficulty and undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property? A little enforcement of these regulations results in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes.
Yeah, I think with all the busy traffic and the nature of why people are coming, there's some medical issue. You want to make sure they get where they want to get, you know, as quickly and safely as they can without endangering other people. And a lot of the way that happens is through thoughtful signage, which, in my view, this is.
Agree? Preservation of equal property rights. literal interpretation of these regulations to deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone, same vicinity. So Ben was just talking about maybe not so much when it comes to the other nearby property owners. Their signs are smaller, but again, the scale of their facilities are different. And 4 stories tall and close to the road and a fairly large facility. So I think the closest equivalent is Lennis, and that's well back from the road. So I don't think we're really granting anything here that is exceptional. Preserving equal property rights. Anyone else have comments about this? No. Minimum variance. Variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. I think it's hard to argue on this if it is or not. I mean, minimum variance is always a tricky one. I think we have to deal with. Two-thirds of the signs in question are sort of blank space or a logo. They could have been made smaller, potentially.
Yeah, I don't think this is a minimum variance. Not that it's unreasonable again, but it seems fairly clearly not minimum to me.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they could have been smaller and still accomplish what they wanted to do, but.
Okay, absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. So we've been discussing some potential detriment would be visibility issues and safety issues, but those will be mitigated, addressed by the city to the best of their ability. So I don't think we have any real detriment here for this.
Yeah,
There's
I don't
been,
think so.
We have no property owners come out and spoke against either.
Right.
Not of a general nature, condition or situation of a specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practical formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. No, I think it's specific to the piece of property.
Yeah, it's very specific.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I can do it.
Here we go.
Stepping up. I'd like to propose a variance in case number 23-12V at 206 Columbus Road, where the applicant is requesting a variance from ACC 230313I2D to allow 3 directional signs with a face area of 16.9 and 12 square feet, where 3 square feet is the maximum permitted, and a height of 6 and 6.5 feet, where 3 feet is the maximum height permitted.
Good job.
I'll second. Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion before we vote? Call a vote. All right, so all those in favor of granting this variance, raise your right hand. Opposed? Same sign. Okay, 4-1. Have your variance, 4-1. All right.
Is when you email the results and all that?
Yeah.
Go straight to you?
So, other business, disposition of minutes from October 10th, 2023. Has everyone had a chance to look at them?
Yeah.
Any,
No issues.
They look good.
hey, Paul, you weren't present, so you don't count.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Actually, who here was present is one of the questions.
I think I was.
I think the 4 of us were.
We were all present? I know I
I didn't
was.
get a chance to review, so I'll abstain.
Okay. So we have,
3. We can still vote.
okay, well, if he abstains, he's a vote still. So the 4 of us that were present, do we need a motion? Move to approve the minutes?
Sure. Sure. So I
As
said a
written.
motion to approve the minutes of October.
And I'll second that.
2023.
And so all in favor of approving the minutes, we have 3 and 1 abstention.
Abstain, yeah.
All right, so we have approved the minutes from October 10th, Mr. Riggs, and we've concluded our business tonight.
So at the end, so there's an initiation. Did they tell you about that?
Meeting adjourned first.
Meeting adjourned, yes.